Bergen-Fischer Media.
Hey, it's Monday, here we go. It's the Call Me Tony Show.
Hey guys, it is Monday again. Not Monday morning, it is Monday afternoon. As I sit down to record, it is 10 past 3 in the afternoon. And the reason I didn't record first thing this morning is, well, in all honesty, I didn't want to first. And I got hung up in making myself a lazy breakfast. I enjoyed that. Played a little bit of guitar, a little bit of harmonica, and just to keep things interesting, I ordered off of Amazon a kalimba, which is something that I'd never really played with before. I had a couple days to monkey around with it. Now I've learned one song well and another one, well, let's say it's a work in progress. But I'm having fun with it. I got distracted, and then a friend of mine invited me to go and meet with him to play some music and do some singing. I did that. And now, I don't know, I feel like I got my head screwed on kind of okay. I can't say bad mood, but kind of stressed out mood I was in that started yesterday is kind of like lifted off of my shoulders. And now I think I'm in a better position to kind of express about the things that were bothering me. One of the things that was coming up was, as some of you know, I started attending a Unitarian Universalist church earlier this year. And I know it's weird, right? The idea of an atheist going to church. But what I like about the Unitarian Universalist is they make room for people that come from any faith background, including a background that involves no faith whatsoever. So naturally, my atheism, it fits in just fine, right? But one of the things about being a part of that congregation is that when things come up, the board of directors, the minister, I mean, these people, they don't just make bold decisions and expect all of us as congregants to live with it. I mean, there's a lot of discussion that goes into decision making. There's a lot of democracy that comes into play. And when things get put to a vote, it's not just a case of, okay, well, this is what we're voting on. There's a lot of conversations even before we get to the point where we're voting on something. And one of the things we've been talking about recently is that I guess the church had been approved for some sort of grant to pay for a local Indigenous artist to paint a mural on the side of our building. Now, the idea of this mural is to sort of, well, I guess not sort of, I mean, it's meant to literally paint a picture of some of the things that have happened to the Indigenous First Nations here in Canada. Look at, how their culture was stolen from them, how death and disease and mistreatment at the hands of church and government kind of became, well, a huge and ugly part of their history. And a lot of these things continue to affect them to this day. Now, the problem that I personally had is, well, I appreciate the story. I appreciate the context of the mural that's being suggested. I get kind of hung up in the superficial nature of it, because when you're talking about a visual art form, I'm not convinced that people necessarily understand that there may be a story behind it. And worse yet, I think that even if somebody does think there must be a story behind it, they're not always going to take the time to investigate and find out what that story is. And so the current incarnation of this mural, I personally am like violently opposed to. I think it sends the wrong message. I think it indicates maybe an inaccurate view of what our values as a congregation actually are. And in all honesty, I mean, if I'm going to be just like brutally honest, I think the painting is ugly. At least the proposed painting. All I've seen is like the artist's rendition at this point. But enough about the painting. I mean, I'm telling you that story just so you'll understand. Okay, like there's a reason why I was kind of like bunched up But where it got kind of worse for me was after this meeting, after we had changed topics and everybody had gone their separate ways, I started having all these thoughts, and I really wish that I'd been able to bring up all of my thoughts in the meeting, but the time just wasn't available for me to stand there and monologue. A lot of people had to have their turn. Plus, there's a limited amount of time just to cover the topic, and a lot of people with a lot of places to go, I suppose. So I think everything got cut short with a lot of people still feeling like they had more to say. Of course, there's going to be more meetings moving forward, but for right now, I kind of wanted to like dig into the topic of truth and reconciliation. I don't know if the international audience, the American audience, really is fully aware of what's going on in Canada as far as the truth and reconciliation movement. I'm not going to get into describing that in detail. If you're interested, it's just a Google search away. You should be able to find just a brief summary of what that's all about. But really, I guess I just wanted to share some of my thoughts on the topic. And the topic itself, it's challenging, it's layered, and in all honesty, it is quite often really, really difficult to talk about. It's an issue that's deeply rooted in my country's history, and while much of the focus rightly brings attention to the truth, I often feel that the reconciliation part doesn't get the emphasis that it needs. Now, I'm coming at this topic from maybe a bit of a different perspective. I'm a first generation Canadian of mixed heritage. My family, new to this country, didn't actually have a hand in its colonization. Like, that happened long before any of us actually got here. One of my parents immigrated Canada specifically to escape systemic racism. So as someone who isn't white, I don't feel the weight of the white guilt. But as a person of color growing up in a very racist community, I experienced exclusion and hostility firsthand. Growing up like that, I feel I have some understanding of what it means to be treated as other, something that Indigenous people here have faced on a much deeper and more systemic level for generations. And with one of my children having Indigenous heritage, there's a personal connection that makes me want to see this country genuinely prioritize reconciliation. Now, the truth in Truth and Reconciliation has seen a lot of focus, as it should. We need to bring these dark chapters to light, to educate, to acknowledge the wrongs of the past. And it's critical that we honor the experiences of Indigenous communities by being honest about Canada's history of colonization and the harm it's caused. But the reconciliation part, where is it? Reconciliation for me goes beyond just hearing the truth. It's about finding ways to actively move forward together. And that's where I start to feel a bit disheartened. How do we create a space that isn't just about guilt or obligation, but actually welcomes diverse ways of helping people bridge the divide? For people like me who don't completely fit into Canada's colonial history, it feels like there should be room to help this country heal without simply being told to accept the sins of the past as though they're my own. My own background doesn't connect me deeply to any one culture. My parents came from different cultures but didn't raise me in either, so in a way I don't even connect fully with Canadian culture. I think there are probably others like me, people of mixed or first generation backgrounds who want to contribute but don't necessarily see where they fit. The reality is this issue is complicated. Reconciliation means different things to different people, and right now it feels like some voices are missing. Why isn't it socially acceptable to ask questions or to voice doubts about how we're going about this? There's a sense that if you question the methods or if you don't fit the traditional Canadian mold, you're not supposed to speak. Yet, if reconciliation is going to happen, there needs to be space for these conversations. we shouldn't be afraid to ask the challenging questions. What does reconciliation actually look like? How do we make sure it's inclusive, that it respects not just the Indigenous perspectives, but the perspectives of new Canadians and others who are invested in seeing the country grow in the right direction? I'd like to imagine a Canada where we can be honest about the past, committed to healing, and open to creating a country that respects and includes everyone in the process. That, for me, would be true reconciliation. A Canada where all voices matter, where the path forward is built together. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to let me share my thoughts. I know that this is a complex and sensitive topic, and I hope my reflections add something useful to the conversation. As always, if you've got thoughts on this or anything else I've spoken about, feel free to send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Call me TonyPod at yahoo.com. And until next week, my friends, take care of yourselves.